Greetings, Scott here, known as Cantaloupe to some online, and I am bringing a subject to you today that's of interest to me. It might be interesting to you or someone you know. It's actually multiple subjects, and what's interesting to me is sometimes there are intersection points between subjects, and this is going to be a rare video where I involve three separate ideas. It's going to be a short video, and these ideas were recently mentioned in one of my chat rooms I go to, and it was kind of a question, kind of a thought about Mormonism, where it intersects with the idea of polygamy, which used to be a Mormon practice officially, and I don't believe it is anymore. And I am no expert about Mormonism, but I'm going to involve the other aspect which was mentioned, and that is racism. So I'm going to tackle all three of these things at the point where they intersect in 5 minutes or less, or more, maybe a little bit more. see what I can do with this. So first of all, like I said, I'm not a Mormon. I'm no expert. I want to qualify that first and foremost. I do know a little bit about it. I've been to a Mormon church. I've met Mormon people. I grew up with Mormon friends, and I have read pieces of the Book of Mormon, and I know what they're about. So that's about the extent of my knowledge and experience and expertise. But I do know that there's a lot of controversy. There's some debate. There's some animosity and confusion about what's proper, how things are handled, some practices, some Mormon rituals and customs that seem strange to ex-Mormons and non-Mormons alike. And I'm not going to address all that, but what I will say is that starting with, I guess, polygamy, which is one of their former practices, to my knowledge, consider in a natural environment where people have they're living in the jungle, for example, and there's no laboratories, there's no advanced medical science or factories to speak of, where you have an industrial or technologically advanced society. You have what's found in the woods, basically, and what can be plucked from a tree or a bush. So you have a problem with reproduction because your partner or your families, your communities are going to not be monogamous. And there's a very good reason why, because monogamy requires, there's only two possible outcomes, assuming that the partners are fertile, which they usually are. Vast majority of the time, people are able to have kids most of their life. So the problem you run into with monogamy is what we saw in the 40s and the mid part of the 1900s here in America, with people having women having so many babies, and before, I should say, before the 1900s as well, all through the Middle Ages, there being so much baby making that the woman would frequently die, and it was a real health problem, because these women were having 10, 12 kids just like expected, and that's not okay. First of all, that's a direct product of monogamy, by the way. So I just want to pause there. There's an alternative, two alternatives. There's really only two when you think about it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the two alternatives are contraception, and this isn't going to be a deep dive into that either, which obviously allows the possibility of monogamy without having 12 kids, for example. There's the possibility of being polygamous, where a person has multiple wives or husbands. That's the definition. Typically, there would be a single source of male reproductive genetics and multiple sources of female reproductive genetics for a very good evolutionary reason. And again, this isn't a comprehensive expose of evolution, but boils down to because the woman carries the baby and she gestates for 9 months, there's never any question of the role of the mother. Rather, there's a big question of the role of the father and responsibility, and this is significant in the dynamics of human families and communities and villages. So anyway, you only have three possibilities to get back to the subject of polygamy. Three possibilities where the woman is not going to die frequently from having too many babies. Either there's going to be polygamy, there's going to be contraception, or abstinence, right? Okay, well, I think the Mormons were onto something, and it was demonized. Our country, by law, in most places here in the United States, polygamy is illegal still, technically. And so what we do instead is we have contraception. But I think that they were trying to address one of the problems in a logical, natural way. And I believe there's evidence, anthropological evidence, that shows that left to our own devices, human beings will be polygamous. That's just what we do. We're very closely related to the bonobo monkeys when it comes down to how we behave without influences in nature. So anyway, video's already at 6 minutes, so that's a short connection with polygamy. Okay, so racism was another aspect that was mentioned in addition to Mormons and polygamy. I want to talk about that, how there is a wild misconception floating around about racism that is like discrimination in all forms. It must be bad. It must be terrible, because we see so many examples of bad racism. We have historical accounts of racist dictators and nations and wars fought over racism, and all of these tragic injustices that are very real. And I'm not trying to minimize or discount any of that. What I'm saying is there is a good way to discriminate. There is a bad way to discriminate, like we already know, but singling people out, which is the definition of discrimination, can be done in a good way and should be done in a good way. You can single somebody out for a reward, for recognition. You can single somebody out in, like, for example, if you're familiar with the idea of affirmative action, this is a literal example of positive racism. It's not all racism is bad. For example, pride in your ethnic roots, your heritage. There's a word for it, heritage. To be black and proud, to be Italian and proud, to be white and proud, to be Asian and proud. These are all allowed. You're encouraged even to do that, to feel good about your people. But people are confused about this because they hear, "Don't be racist." Well, wait a minute. That doesn't make sense, because I know I shouldn't feel bad about who I am or who my people are. I know that's obvious. So you're right. Actually, you're absolutely right. You should not feel bad about your heritage. Never. Unless you want to, that's different. So there's good discrimination. There's bad discrimination. And it really boils down to a different issue. We're blaming the wrong problem, as usual, and that is fairness, or lack of fairness. We need to be more fair. We need to aim to single people out for constructive reasons in a fair, productive way that's honest, hopefully. Because the complaint, when it comes down to it, the only real complaint is that people are being treated unfairly, if you ask me. So what do we do? Okay, well, we have contraception. I don't want to talk too much about contraception, but without contraception, we're stuck with monogamy or having 12 babies per marriage on average. What do? That's a problem, if you ask me. Well, what I would recommend is allow people to love and mind your business. Shoot, it's really that easy. Quit nosing into individuals and couples who didn't ask for your help, didn't ask for your judgment. They're not having any problems. They're running their family the way they want. Maybe they have a whole community of people doing it. That's fine too. When there's a problem, then we'll talk, right? So I keep mentioning we shouldn't rush to judgment. We shouldn't make unilateral rules that are unfair to half the people and unfairly empower the other half. Okay, that's what every single unilateral rule does. So let the people do what they got to do until there's an issue. That's not that complicated. Anyway, I've gone on. It's not 9 minutes, 45 seconds. If you have questions, reach out to whitehotrobot@gmail.com. I hope you have a great day. Thank you.